So here in Chicago, we hear a lot of stories about prisons out on the West Coast and the streets a little bit too on the West Coast, especially California, and how racially tense and segregated and just racist in general the prison politics are over there in California. Now, I'm not from there, so having heard a lot of people from outside Chicago comment on Chicago and hearing how it's kind of off a little bit, I'm not gonna pretend like I know firsthand whether or not that's accurate about California. And anybody that's from California can comment in the comment section whether it's really like that, because I don't know. I've never been locked up there. But here in Chicago, that's kind of like a foreign thing, really. I haven't seen too much of that. So now I've heard, like I said, that in California, the Mexicans click up with the whites in prison. And the thing that I heard that was behind this was that back in the day, the Mexican mafia, and I don't know if this story is true or not, this is just what I heard, but there was a guy named Joe Pegleg Morgan, who was a Croatian guy who had grown up in a Mexican area of LA, and he was friends with like the original founders of the Mexican mafia, and that he became like a member, like a white member of the Mexican mafia, La M, and when he was locked up over there, he went to the whites and he arranged a truce with the white gangs over there, so that even to this day that truce has lasted. The Mexicans and the whites roll together against the blacks, and I don't know if the blacks are clicked up with like the Asians or somebody else. I don't know if they've got anybody else on their side, but I've heard that the whites and the Mexicans roll together over there, but whether or not that's true, I don't know. But that there's this racial tension over there. Over here, you don't really see that, man. And I haven't even heard of it from anybody else coming out. Now, why is that? So there's a couple reasons that I can point to, and you guys who have been locked up, let me know if especially you older guys, can weigh in on this too. The first thing is that back in the day here, okay, from the earliest days of Chicago started off as like a predominantly white city, almost all whites, but it was divided up by ethnic groups that didn't get along with each other. In Cali, you had like Mexicans there from the start, and blacks and everybody was over there like in the early days. Over here, these white groups like beefed heavily with each other. The Irish, the Italians, the Polish, the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, nobody got along. Even the concept of like whites getting together and forming a gang, like that's not going to happen. Like, Irish and Italians and, all them clicking up, like that's just not going to happen. They were each other's biggest enemies back in the day. Matter of fact, during the race riots of the Red Summer, the Irish actually tried to, the Irish were going against the blacks. They tried to get the Italians to come in and help them on their side, but to the Italians, the Irish were a bigger threat than the blacks. So the Italians said, forget it, deal with it yourselves. And then one of the Irish guys set an Italian guy's house on fire to try to make them think that the blacks had done it, to get the Italians to click up with them. And it didn't work. The Italians called their bluff and said, you guys take care of it yourself. It's your problem. So yeah, it's been like that. So whites clicking up to form their own like squad in prison and go against other races, it wasn't going to happen because the whites had too much in-house beef, because it was all these different immigrant groups. Whereas in California, from what I see, most of the whites over there are like, like Anglo-Saxons that have been here from like the early days of the country. And even guys, if you actually break down like the actual racial history of what the quote unquote definition of Aryan is, a lot of the guys that are in those gangs out of those, like all those Aryan gangs, I know there's like 10 of those gangs out there now, like that call themselves Aryan this or Aryan that. A lot of these guys in these gangs are not even Aryan. Like me, I'm not Aryan. Like Greeks, Italians, like we're not Aryan. Aryan is only a specific kind of European. But yet, guys like that would, if I was put in prison over there, they would like press me to roll with them. Even though like even the Irish are not Aryan. Russians, Slavs, those guys are not Aryan. Joe Pegleg Morgan being Croatian, he wasn't Aryan. Aryan is only from like northwestern Europe, a certain part of it. Those guys being on the same team over there, I think that created like a racial division. And then the other thing is that the Mexicans here, for them to get along in prison, like the 2-6 and the Kings and all that, like that's not going to happen. Like the in-house beef is way bigger, So Mexicans clicking up to get down on another race in there, like they're going to click up with a black gang that's not their ops before they click up with a Hispanic gang that is their ops. Because on the street, that beef is so intense, like the Saints and the Rosas and all like that. Just them clicking up, forget it. And then again, it's the same thing with the blacks. Like they're not getting along on the street. Every neighborhood for themselves or whatever. So for them to click up to get down on another race, like that's not going to happen. So the other thing is that Larry Hoover and Jeff Fort and some of these guys, like in the 80s, they called a truce and made an alliance with gangs of other races. So the Royals and the MLDs and some of these gangs that were not black gangs clicked up with the folks. So it was like a multiracial coalition, and then the People Nation did the same thing. You had the Kings and the Stones. Even as early as recently as like the early 2000s, I remember them rolling together on certain things. And as a matter of fact, on the Southwest side, I think the Vice Lords over by West Inglewood and the Kings over there, I know they were like kind of clicking up for a little bit. So yeah, the Folk and People Nation Alliance transcends racial lines. So for the races to divide up, that would totally go against what was going on the streets, because that alliance holds in prison too. That's one of the few things. Prison is one of the few places where that actually still is intact. And then finally, Chicago is just and Cook County in general is just a lot more condensed area. And so you've got people growing up in areas here and there that are run by other races, and this actually usually involves people that normally get into the streets. Like a lot of times when you see a guy who's one particular race, like white or Latino, if he's like growing up in a black area, 9 times out of 10 when I've seen that, the guy gets involved in the streets, belonging to a group or whatever. He's getting accepted by the people in the neighborhood or whatever, and he joins a gang, and oftentimes goes like super hard at it. I don't know. I'm not going to interview these guys and like let you know specifically why, but that's what I see. And you guys can let me know if you see the same thing. But that's definitely what I see, and I can name specific examples. You got like white guys growing up in Mexican hoods, certain Mexican guys growing up in black hoods, especially over east, and they go like they join the gangs over there, and then they go super hard. So for them, again, like you've got a lot of black Latin kings over on the east side. So for them to like get down on some racial stuff against, their own race when they're a member of another race's gang, you see that too much. Whereas in California, the AB and all, they're not letting members of other races join those gangs. And like the Mexican mafia and them, like typically you're not going to see like members of other races in those gangs. The gangs are pretty much monoracial. You might see some guys, I think there's like Crips and Bloods here and there that might be like Mexican or whatever, but that's the exception to the rule. So that's my take on it. But you guys, I can't pin it down to a specific reason. I saw this in the comments, and I wanted to address this. Shout out to Davon, he was bringing this up. And I think one other of my subscribers, but there's positives and negatives to it, but it's mostly positive that there's not this racial stuff, because like I know for a fact, if I went out to Cali's prison, I've heard that like the AB and them are going to press like any white guy to get involved. Like that ain't going to happen to me. Like I'd rather be dead. Like forget that. But that's just my own personal stance on it. Your boy Wincy Report. I'm out.